Sounds
Okay, hang on. Let me get my audio sorted because I'm recording also on Logic, the audio. Okay,
Should we
so
clap? Should we clap for the? No, that's you don't have to do that anymore, right? Take one.
so the Fearlessly Curious podcast is super excited to have none other than the digital podcaster himself, Dylan Schmidt. Dylan, round of applause, resounding global applause. And I feel really proud to be here and to have Dylan with us today because Dylan has a very, very important, has and had a very important role in my journey to creating this podcast. And I'm feeling quite emotional about it actually, because
Oh,
you helped me so much on this journey. You helped me find clarity. You were so generous with your time and just your whole presence, Dylan. You're so grounded and encouraging, and you just make everything seamless and easy. And I really, really appreciate you. So I'm proud just to be here to be able to just sort of declare my gratitude for how you've helped me and how excited I am by the way that you're helping other people in all the different expressions of what you're passionate about. So there's the podcasting academy, there's content clips, there's a podcast workshop. And I'm going to say enough. I'm going to stop there because I really want to hear it from you, Dylan. So welcome to the Fearlessly Curious podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm happy to be here, and um, I don't know whether to cry now or later, but maybe both. I'm just happy to be here, and I'm such a supporter of you, and it's cool to be chatting with you today.
Thank you. And I'm jealous. I'm just going to say I'm going to put it out there for all of you who are
Sure.
not subscribed to the video podcast yet, because once you do that, you're going to see how beautiful Dylan's video quality is.
Sometimes too beautiful if I haven't got enough sleep. Then it shows a little. It shows a little bit too HD. Sometimes not having HD is a is a good thing.
Isn't that what sunglasses are for?
That's true. That's a good point. I don't. I've not got to that confidence level. But I need to get fiercely curious enough to that level where I could wear sunglasses indoors. I've never. I know if anyone could help me get to that level, it would be you. So
Okay, maybe we'll have another we'll not have another episode all about getting comfortable wearing sunglasses indoors. It's a thing.
yeah,
It's a
rocking it.
thing. But before we get there, I'd love for you to share with our listeners what you do. I mean, I kind of shared that already, but I think more why you do what you do.
Yeah. So why I do so, like you said, I help people with podcasts and short form content, the long, the short, which is really just everything. And I, my goal, my real mission is just to help other people express themselves, to help share whatever it is that they feel called upon to share. And a large part of that is because I didn't really know how to do that for so many years. So I found the easiest way to do that was helping other people and kind of like working behind the scenes for many years. And that was great. But I kept hearing other people say, why don't you do for yourself what you do for other people? I never knew what that looked like because nothing came to mind. You know, it's not like I wanted to necessarily make content myself and do all this stuff. I just kept hearing it. People are like, you would do great at this. And I'm like, I don't know what that looks like. And then randomly, I just had an idea in 2021 about making helping people with podcasts. I'm like, this is what I do behind the scenes. I've got too much experience that, you know, I can't really psych myself out for too long thinking I'm not qualified to do it because I've been in this kind of realm for so many years. So I started making some posts, and then it started getting some traction. And I was like, wait, like this is exactly what I've been waiting for years. So I didn't abandon helping everybody else. If anything, it just gave me like a platform to kind of like, hey, a little bit of like a lighthouse of like, or a beacon, like this is how I can help other people. And that's been really exciting. And it feels like I started driving a car ever since that first Instagram post. and the car has not stopped in a good way. And it's just been a
Mm-hmm.
like, I get it when people are like, it's been a journey ever since, because it really does feel like it's been a journey ever since. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been really cool. And it's, of course, weird thinking back about it, but meeting beautiful, wonderful people like yourself, like, what, and crossing paths, like feeling effortlessly in a lot of ways, it just like lights me up. It makes me excited to wake up in the morning. Uh, I've never been like, oh, I don't, this, it doesn't, never felt like a job. And the things I've done, like mowing the lawn years ago, felt like a job. Doing and helping people with podcasts and content type stuff has never felt like a job. And so yeah, so my why behind it is helping other people, helping myself, and it just feels like a cool community.
Thank you. I love that statement you said there, that you needed to take your time to kind of understand what that looks and feels like. And I've got it in front of me. People were telling you, do what I do for others, for myself. It's a bit of a conundrum, actually. And even when I say it out loud, it kind of feels funny. And I think you and I quite aligned on that. I just correct me if I'm wrong, right? I hyper focus on how I can help people. So I'm not really thinking about myself. But where I often fall short in that is I'm constantly thinking, what is the right thing for me to do for other people? But in my own personal growth journey, once I started to turn inward and ask, what do I need? Why don't I just do more of that, what I need and what I love? And then the people who are aligned to me are the people that I'm already serving. So it's almost like be the person that you need.
100%. And I think for years I know for years I tried like little things here and there that I thought might have been an expression of what that looked like, but it really wasn't. It was like playing small in some ways. Like I would make some like an account that was, the goal was to be inspiring, but didn't really have like much momentum behind it. And then when it was like, oh, podcasting, voice, sharing a message, like there's all the things that I needed to hear, but also sharing those with others. And then what was helpful about it, at least for me, was like positioning wise, it was like people would be like, this is exactly what I needed to hear. Like, this is exactly what I needed to hear too. Like, it wasn't like from a place of ego, do this, do this with that. It was more just like, this is what, maybe if whoever comes across it resonates with it, cool. Cause I need it too. Like it's not, I'm not preaching, or my goal isn't to preach. My goal is just to share something, because I could go back and be like, oh yeah, that's a great reminder,
I love
which
that.
is
And
such a different thing than do this.
it is such a different thing. And that's what magnetized. Well, I can't remember now how we met. I can't remember, it was through an entrepreneurs group, or do you remember how we met? Do you remember, Dylan? I've lost your audio. Oh, there you are. Do you remember how we met? You there, Dylan? Do you hear me? Hello? Are you there? Are you
Did I
there?
lose you?
Yeah, that's you. I got you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know what happened.
I can hear you now, but you
Yeah.
disappeared just now. It's okay.
Yeah.
We got you back. So, do you remember where we met?
Was it the future?
It was a Future Pro group.
The future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But so that's where I met you. And then when I kind of connected with you, and I got into the Podcast Academy, which I'm going to ask you to share a little bit more about. Well, even though you've just shared it, but this whole structure behind it, you immediately put me at ease. The way that you deliver your content, or rather, I should say, the way that you deliver the information around how to start a podcast, and being a beginner and being maybe very shy, perhaps even, I'm going to use the word introverted about it, right? You just, more than anything, you made me feel very safe to be me and to do it my way. And that didn't have to be loud, nor did it have to be fast, nor did it have to be linear. there is a kindness and a vulnerability and a, what's the word, a tenderness in the way that you deliver the teaching. I'm going to say it is teaching, but like you said, it's in the way that you share it. And it's kind of like, this is how I did it. You could do it this way, or you could not. And that's okay too. This is all about figuring out what's right by you. So it's not like, oh, this is my template, do this template. You know, it was the energy was totally different. The intention was completely different. And I really appreciate that about the way that you bring this forward. Could you tell everybody a little bit about the Podcasting Academy and
Yeah.
what that looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so nice to hear everything you just said, because that's how I structured it when I was making in like the very first version of Podcast Academy. I was like, I don't want to, I don't want to box someone in to make this like boring podcast that like they don't do, but also I need to give someone enough structure that they actually like know what steps to follow. And I want to make it like abstract enough so that it could apply to different backgrounds and people that want to talk about anything. And I need to give enough structure so that there's like, no matter what you're going to talk about, you still kind of know, kind of like a paint by colors idea. You know, it's like there's maybe like a watercolor thing, but then once you do that, you're like, oh, actually, maybe I don't even need the instructions on how to plug in the numbers of which each color might be. So the whole that was like that's been the goal of Podcast Academy, and it's always trying to refine it slowly enough, not that it like overhauls everything, but make slow improvements, also adding a bunch of things in. So I structure it in a specific way that even people who maybe feel like they're procrastinating around their podcast, like they can know where they are, maybe on the procrastination spectrum of like
Yes.
I've recorded, but what do I do next? You know, and it's like so I set it up into like 5 pillars, where the planning, recording, um, and then the publishing and kind of launching, and then the marketing and growing, and then the monetization. And each of those, you can follow them like 1 through 5, and that you can like go back from the beginning of each time, and then within each of those pillars, I like to call them pillars, there's tools and resources to use, whether it's prompts of what to talk about or how to title your episodes, or you know, ways to grow your podcast. My real, I don't know if it's selfish agenda is, but like I want to make it, I'm in the process of slowly building it up to be this like thing where people go in and they don't feel overwhelmed in the sense that there's so much information they feel like they'll never consume it, because I also want to make it consumable.
Yeah.
But it's they go in and they feel empowered, and then they also like can go back to it and be like, you don't need absolutely everything in it right at once. So I try to give like the minimum amount of information in the beginning in a way, and then it's like, how far deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go? You know, not everybody needs an email newsletter for their podcast, but if you want one, you know,
Mm.
that's a little section in there. Or, you know, if you want to make video clips for social media, like if not everyone needs to do that, but if you want to do that, there's a section in there. And it doesn't all have to be related. Like you don't have to watch that video to understand the part about planning. So I try it's been like interesting because I build it with people like yourself in mind, that I mean, how do you how I don't even know how I would linearly think like, all right, Melissa, like this is what you need to do, you know, step one,
Yeah.
step two. Like I could do that, but you got to leave room for magic. You know, you got to leave
Mm.
room for something beautiful to happen, or else the finished product is going to be maybe a little stale, you know?
Mm. Oh my gosh, what you just said there, leaving room for magic, that individuality, that fearless authenticity of that individual to show up in a way that we can't plan, right? Having that space for all that information to integrate. And so we get out of our heads of seeing, oh, these are the steps, and then we start to flow in it. That is absolutely the magic, Dylan. Thank you. And you're so right about really want to celebrate the way that you structured the academy. Like you said, I know for me, so many of the programs or that I sign up for, people are so eager and committed to deliver high quality, high value people just like you, right? But what can often fall short is delivering it all at once. And it is overwhelming. It's happened to me many, many, many times, right? I've signed up, I'm so eager, I'm enthusiastic, and I am just flooded with all this value and content. But then I have to pull out because it's just too much. And I can't move. I'm completely overwhelmed. In the end, I actually don't know what I need to do next, even though the steps are right in front of me, right? My brain can only take so much, and my body definitely can't embody all that information at one time.
Yeah.
So the way that
I
you
can
structured it, oh, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's like my biggest goal. I've worked with uh I work with creative individuals like yourself that, if it's like it's leaving room for like something to happen is kind of, and I'm sure you can relate with this, and people listening, like if you leave room for something to happen, something magical, like it's one on one hand, it's like scary as like the teacher, the facilitator, because people are then like, well, no, I want, if they sign up and they were expecting something different, and if I'm just like, make something amazing, and they're like, well, just tell me what to say, and I'm like, well, that's not really what this is.
Mm.
I'll give you like maybe some prompts, some guidance, but I'm always thinking of ways to like, if you're feeling like lost of, because I've been there, like I paid a lot of money, I've signed up for a lot of courses and programs, and it's just like an over, and I'm always wanting to add stuff to Podcast Academy, but at the end of the day, I'm always like, does this need to be in there? Is this going to move? Like, I'd rather optimize something that's currently in there than add something in there to then potentially confuse somebody. But I've really learned, I feel like, as my years go on, is that
Mhm.
less really is so much more. And sometimes people, what, I think someone might want or need is not what they actually want or need or are even asking for. So I'm trying to like also remind myself to not fulfill things that just aren't, that was like never an issue. It almost just causes more confusion, like overloading. What if I just put all this in one spot? Um, and so yeah, and I have a bunch of ideas, and this year has already started out really creative, and it's already like, oh, okay, well, I need to start organizing things on myself. Like I can relate. I can relate.
I think you have an incredible system, and for someone who wants to do this, who's even thought about doing a podcast and maybe wants to massage that idea out a bit more without even committing to doing it, I still feel joining your community, like getting into the podcasting academy, you can't lose because you'll just get more clarity from there, whether you start the podcast or not. But even if you have the idea, I highly recommend you get into the podcast academy with Dylan. And it's just a beautiful community and space to be. And you won't lose because you'll come out of there just having learned so much about podcasting, about messaging, about actually being an entrepreneur as well. And Dylan, can you tell us a little bit? Because I know what's new for 2023, at least, is the podcast workshop. Did I get that right? Or is it podcaster
Yeah.
workshop?
Yeah. Podcast workshop. It's
Okay.
something, I don't know what is in my water. Electrolytes actually is in my water, but I don't know what supplement that has gotten into me creating some cool tools right away. I'm getting downloads over here. It's
That's
probably
awesome.
because I've been watching your content.
Ah, Dylan.
um, Getting some downloads. So I started this, like my brain is also always thinking of like, how can I provide free value
Mhm.
that is not like the typical, not like marketing, like I'm going to funnel you into this thing. Because the people that I talk with, we don't talk like funnels and
Mhm.
ways of strategies of like people, like their leads and things like that. It's just like these are human beings. So my thought was like, it's kind of all came together, but basically it's called Podcast Workshop. I got the domain podcastworkshop.com, so I had to do something with it. And every the first week of every month this year, I'm doing a free virtual workshop that's pre-recorded, and then usually has like a free accompanying tool with it. So what that looks like for this month as we're recording it, I made a workshop about building your audience. And it's like, just like how Podcast Academy is like, where you're at. as far as each step of the way. The same with like building an audience. Like, what do you need to know? What are the tangible steps like the tactical, real steps you need to take? Um, and then I made like a whole workbook that asks questions to uncover that stuff. So I made that for free. There's no like, it's just structured in a way that's like teaching exactly how I would in Podcast Academy. And because we live in an age of like over information,
Mhm.
I try to at least value a little bit of the scarcity mindset of like, if you know something's going to be leaving and you want it for free, like you pretty much have to act on it. So what I do is I just leave it up for the first week of each month, the new workshop, and then
Mhm.
after that it gets moved and stored in Podcast Academy. Um, Mostly so it just doesn't become another YouTube video because
Mm.
there's already enough of those. And if it just was uploaded as that, I could upload it as that, and I could put a Google Drive link in the description. But I want people to actually like use it and treat it differently.
Mm.
So that was my thought behind that. And then I start adding these layers into it. So then it's like, well, let's make it one step more. And every time someone signs up for Podcast Academy that does the workshop, let's start making like picking a charity and then donating a charity from the
Mm.
enrollment. And wow, those are really cool. Like to be able to do that uh, is just a new feeling for me, and also a new like unlocked a new mission. I'm like, whoa, it's something so much bigger. Um, so incorporating the charity aspect has been cool. Uh, and then I created another tool called Content Secrets.
Okay,
Well, this,
pause 1 second, Dylan. Pause one
yes, okay.
second. I will get to that. I just want to sum up that podcast workshop, right? So people
Yeah.
can access that. Um, it's no charge for that.
No, no
And
charge.
yes, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah,
Just in
always
case.
free. During the window that it's basically the first week of every month, the new workshop is free.
And but at the same time, there is a limit to its availability, public availability. And you mentioned the word scarcity. I want to flip that and say it's actually because what I understand is because you want people to value the content. And
Yes.
in a world, like you said, where it's like doom scrolling, it's like we've got hundreds of thousands of pieces of content on the same topic, or I should say millions. You basically want to magnetize the people who are aligned to the way you deliver the message and value it, take action on it, right? And
Yeah.
so that's why you limit the time. And I, for one, was at the first workshop. I'm part of the Podcasting Academy. I could
Yeah.
have waited until Dylan shifted it across, but I'm like, no, I want to be there. I want to be there before it even gets into the academy. And then I did notice, yeah, this month, right now as we're recording this, it's February. This month, Dylan mentioned about adding that piece about contributing to communities through a charity. And I love that. And this is what I love about everything that you do, Dylan. It is so highly intentional and it comes from the heart. So we've got Podcasting Academy, we've now got Podcast Workshop, and now tell us about Content Secrets.
Content Secrets. So, you know, the struggle I have and a struggle other people speak with have is like wanting, this is, I guess you can already tell how it goes back. Like I didn't know what to talk about for years. I maybe wanted to share something publicly, but I didn't know what to say. It's this idea maybe of like blank page syndrome of like, I want to say something, but I don't know what to say. So what I made, and this is like crazy because it just came to me. I think this was like a week ago. And it all came together. Basically, if you were a solo person, you could be by yourself. And there's again like a step by step process of identifying what it is that you can talk about. And then there is right now it's I made a chat bot for it so that it would ask you questions, but it worked better as a form. So it might evolve back into a chat bot, but currently it's a form that you fill out that asks you questions in a specific way that draws
Mhm.
the content out of you without you even trying.
Mm.
So it's like an effortless way to answer your audience's questions. It's primarily, I think, at the moment, most useful for coaches, consultants, creatives. Uh, but the whole idea is it's almost like being on an interview and the podcast host is asking you all the questions that like your audience would want to know the answers to,
Right.
not necessarily the podcast host's audience. And there's a couple, you know, right now is version 1, and so you fill out the form after you kind of become initiated on like how it works, and then it sends you back all of your responses via email. So then all you have to do is like copy and paste and share it with your community, and it's like it doesn't feel like, oh, I gotta, become a content creator or something like that.
Mm,
It's just a natural extension of wanting to help people, wanting to share your message. I'm trying to like draw it out of the people without them even know that I'm drawing it out of them.
mm,
So it doesn't feel like this making this this uh, thing that like I don't know. It's like what should we create content around? Like don't
mhm,
even think about content. Just think about the question that I'm asking, you know.
mhm. I
And the next thing you
imagine
know, you have content.
I imagine this is a great tool also for imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you think
Yeah.
like, oh, why would anybody want to listen to me? Or what do I know about this? And you mentioned
Yeah.
this right in the beginning where you're like, I'm not even going to think about, everything that I know. Or because intrinsically that might lead to what about all the stuff I don't know that I don't know yet? And then that could be what stops you from doing stuff. Because I know for the longest time, that's what stopped me from taking the step to launch, create, birth my podcast. It was like, well, actually, what do I have to say? Actually, why would anyone want to listen to me? And there I was hyper focusing on other people when really I knew that the stuff that I had to share, I knew in my heart had value because it
Yeah.
impacted my life. And I know that when I listen to other people's stories, it first of all reminds me that I'm not alone. Right. And I think that's the most important thing in life. As humans, we want to connect. And that's another reason why I also love the Digital Podcast Academy. It's connection. Not only are you helping people connect with themselves, their voice, their message, their purpose, their authenticity, but within that community, and the podcasting community, I'm only just a beginner in it, we're discovering each other on a deeper level. So
Yeah.
Content Secrets, is that out already?
Yeah. It's out. And do you think like I feel this way? Like sometimes it's like I have so many things I want to help people with. It's hard to zero in on it. Like it's hard to just I could talk about anything. I could talk about everything. And I'm like, I want to solve all of the world's problems in
Yeah.
one thing. And the goal is, yeah, for it to just narrow your focus into one specific question. And then that question then goes on and on and on and on to an idea that can ripple out. But yeah, that's happening now. There's another version of it I'm working on now that you can also do a video version. So it's me in a video chat bot that's like, it would be like, hey, Melissa, so we have your first, thing that you listed here. Say it's about creativity, or let's just say mindfulness. We have the first thing you mentioned about mindfulness here. What is the biggest misconception people have about mindfulness? And then it automatically just goes to you and it starts recording, and then it's like me interviewing
Oh,
you essentially
wow.
without me being there, and then you end up with these like finished things.
Oh my God, is that coming?
Yeah, that's like real soon, yeah. But I think but not everybody wants to be on camera, so that's
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make it two options. One is just written, and then one will be a video. Like you could do either one, do
Mm-hmm.
both. You could just do the video. But I meet, a good amount of people that just don't want to be on camera, so I don't want to only have that option.
Mm.
Um,
So many options though.
yeah.
And the fact that you're providing tools for this. I mean, I say so many, it's two options, right? On video or not
But
on video. And the fact that you're providing tools for both um, is invaluable. I believe is invaluable. I'm really excited to consume that or learn from that or take that on board too. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still new in this game. And like I said, super proud to have you on here. And I decided to make a big investment by having a podcast management team. So I have my own podcast manager now, and I have a team who edits my audio, cleans it up, I'm still doing my video editing and I'm learning how to use Descript. But I do have a team that helps me even with pushing content out and repurposing stuff. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm still in the podcast academy. And I want to let people know that, people listening, because it's really, at least for me, it's really important for me to understand the process. Because more than anything, it's not because I want to check up on my team or I want to micromanage them, but more than anything, I have a deeper appreciation for the work that they're doing, not for me, but with me. So when I understand the entire process, even though I'm not taking each step, I value each member of my team. And as I refine my role, right, my responsibilities, and I can be accountable for myself, then I get to make the whole machinery, the whole production, it becomes more well-oiled. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Yeah. And I think that seems like such a valuable way to approach it because, too, like if a team member were to leave or you had to replace somebody for whatever reason, you're not left in the dark of like, I don't even know how this car drives. Like, where does the gas go?
Yeah.
Or how do I plug it in if it's electric vehicle? um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. And it also means that, as a leader, I can be more aware and more in tune with maybe where my team members may be struggling and maybe don't feel comfortable to tell me. If I'll be able to take notice of if something isn't running smoothly, and I can ask the question, is everything okay? Because I understand the process. And so the reason why I'm saying this again is for anybody who's listening who maybe already has their podcast team or still new but is looking to get a podcast team. The Podcast Academy, I still feel, is a very important community and learning platform to be a part of. And I'll be very honest, I don't have any affiliate running with
yeah.
Dylan.
Yeah. I'm
I
like, I
just
should set up one after this. No.
I do it because I genuinely I'm learning so much from it. And love the work that Dylan is doing, the service that Dylan is providing. Dylan, I got to ask you something.
Yeah.
You mentioned something. Okay, two things. So I want to make sure I don't forget. The first thing is I want to talk about mental health
Mm.
and emotional well-being, because when you start a podcast, right, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of boxes to tick. And you've covered that. You've got the 5 pillars that you mentioned in Podcast Academy. But I look at how much you're doing, you know, now with podcast workshop, and then content secrets. And then we haven't even touched on content clips yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Or podcast newsletter or the baby I had 6 weeks
Oh,
ago.
yeah. I want to talk about fatherhood because that's like the biggest.
How does he do it?
But how do you navigate that, maintaining, taking care of your mental health and emotional well-being when you're providing so much value and service to your community?
Yeah, I have it's funny to me because it's those things sometimes that I struggle with of like sharing that it's obvious to me but not obvious to others about managing certain things. So I have really good over the years because I didn't have at one point. That's the only way I could
Mm-hmm.
have it now is really good boundaries with tech and I practice like a high amount of discipline with electronics really,
Right.
and I try to be mindful of how I'm doing, um, what are like the key kind of mechanisms of action, like what do I need to do each day to make sure that I'm um, my own cup is like filled up
Yeah.
because it's really easy for that just to go dry. Um, and I try to structure things in a way that just like work for me. And some of that is not it's like it doesn't look the same probably for me as it would everybody else, but it requires like I have pretty good boundaries, I would say. I don't spend as much time on social media as people probably think. Um, for someone that like has a bunch of accounts and sometimes there's many times where I'll post every day or something. Um, and yeah, my media consumption, I'm pretty mindful of it all. I meditated for uh, years and years and years. Like I had a streak going for like 1,200 days in a row, and then I journal every
Wow.
day. I exercise. So those are like the things that I got to do in order to not feel like I'm gonna fall apart or my eyes are gonna fall out of my head. Um, but
That
yeah,
would
I'm a
be
big.
ugly. That would be ugly.
It would
Ugly for everybody. Painful.
be hard to keep the business going. Um, but yeah, I I feel like it's like practice and then also just like the self help in general. Like I'm a big fan of uh, of like things that you talk about and the type of content you make. Like that's nourishing. You know, talking about marketing tools and AI. Like that's sometimes a little junk food, but like
Mm,
actual real like nourishment of the mind, body, and soul is like I try my best to consume more of that than like anything else.
mhm.
Yeah.
Thank
Does that
you.
make sense?
Yeah,
Because
it
it
does. Of course, it makes total sense. I mean, you have a high value put towards discipline and boundaries, the self care, for one of a different expression.
yeah. And the like presence too. Like if I'm with you, I want to be with you. If I am on Instagram, I'm on Instagram. If I'm, with my wife, I'm with my wife. Um, and to me, like it's never gone wrong when I'm just present with what's in front of me. So I just keep doing that.
I love that. Not into multitasking,
You know?
and I would agree with you on that. I think there's conflicting messaging out there in the world. There's been a very high regard for people who can multitask, but often, at least I know for me, when I multitask, I end up with 10 tasks that are unfinished, which again is not a good or bad thing as long as I'm okay with that and I meet my deadline, so to speak. Because, oh my gosh, I could go into a whole rabbit hole conversation with you about the ADHD type brain, because that actually
Yeah.
works for an ADHD type brain. The pressure of needing to complete something in one sitting for an ADHD type brain is not healthy. But back to the point is, I think self-awareness, like knowing what works for you,
Yeah.
and in a way what's more important is knowing what doesn't work for you, and either doing less of what doesn't work or none of it is how we take care of our mental health and
Yeah.
our emotional health as well.
Yeah. And I find myself falling into extremes, like where if I start something, I want to finish it. But um, I've tried to get better at, balancing things or leaving things undone. Like I am definitely someone who, once they start something, I just want to keep doing it. Like Julia Cameron has the book, The Artist's Way,
Mm-hmm.
if you're familiar with it. And she has a thing called the morning pages where you
Mm-hmm.
stream of consciousness write 3 pages every morning. And I'm the type of person that like if I miss a day, I'm like, oh no, my day, or was the type of person if my day was like ruined if I didn't write that day. And I've really tried to work on getting better at like, well, what does it look like if I don't do it every single day? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what happens then? And especially in the last couple months, particularly in the last 2 months, I've had to, just like life circumstance, I've had to be less active, whether it's making certain things. For me, it looks like less active. For other people, they're like the output is really high still.
Yeah.
For me, it looks less active, but the response has been higher. It's like the busier I get, the uh, and the less I can do of certain things, like the even busier I get, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Like, yeah, right after um, my wife and I had our daughter, like a couple days after, I was like, well, I'm just going to take a break from making videos. And then I make a video that I had an idea in the shower. I was like, I'm going to make a video about this. It'll take me I was like, hey, I'm just going to make this video real quick, even though I was probably just going to not make one. I just really make this. And it gets all this new business, like 100,000 views. And I was just like,
Wow.
of course, now that I'm busy and I have no room for like, I have very little capacity. I'm getting a bunch of DMs and I'm getting a bunch of people signing up and all this stuff happening. And I'm like, it's the universe. The universe. It's such a sense of humor of now that
Right.
if I tried to create this about 3 months ago, what are the odds that would happen? Probably. Well, I tried to do that. And then now that I'm like, I barely have time to make this video. And then it's like, poof.
Mm, gotta love it
Yeah.
when we're doing it also from a state of flow, right? Not like I think I should do this or I think this is what people need, but hey, there's an idea. I've got the energy to see it through, and then, like you said, the end universe is like, oh, here's a bunch more stuff, right? um,
Totally. Yeah.
but that surrendering to the flow of life is indeed a skill, I believe, and it sounds like you've pretty much nailed it.
I
But
mean, I
this,
try. I feel, but it feels like constantly like I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm, I don't know if you feel that way. Do you feel like,
oh my God, all the time,
what do you,
all the time. I don't know. And the thing is, do we ever know? We don't really always know everything, right? Even what I think I know, I'm sure there's something within the what I know I don't know. So we really will never know. We never try, or we never act on that impulse. And that impulse looks and feels different for everybody. I mean, I know for me, it's my gut. If I don't listen to my gut or my gut instinct or my gut response, and I talk myself out or into something that my gut has already said no or yes to, so I do the opposite. In it, 9 times, actually not 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, I end up regretting the decision my mind made when I allowed it to override what I knew I felt in my body. Is that something
that,
that you can relate to?
yeah. And I'm like always trying to decipher, like, I have trouble still sometimes of like, am I pushing the pedal too hard, or should I be doing this, or should I be doing that? Should I be doing, and then sometimes, because sometimes when I've been like, ooh, am I feeling a nervousness about making something because it's a good nervousness, or is this a nervousness like I should be taking a nap? you know uh and I'm like, usually during that time, I guess it's like, did I eat, or is there something else my
Mm,
body is just needing? And yeah, because I'm good at like pushing through, and then I'm also good at like turning off, and I'm like, sometimes it's like all or nothing. um so finding that balance while still like being in the flow is feels just like a constant uh
adventure.
adventure, but one I wouldn't want any other way, having lived the other
Yeah.
way of ignoring the flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the key, I think that you've shared is really these is the curiosity. I mean, here we are,
Yeah.
fearlessly curious. Spending those moments to pause and just check in. Like, is this what I should be doing now? And then, or is this what I can choose to do now? Because there's that word should that so many of us, right, have been conditioned to use.
Mhm.
I've discovered in my life, every time I use the word should, that's like a red flag for me now. It's a red flag of how I may be abandoning what I need to do in order to do what my mind is trying to control, as opposed to being in the flow of the moment. The mind is trying to control it. I should be.
Mm.
It's like taking me away from where I am, the present moment. And you mentioned that just now, right? It's about being
Yeah.
present.
Yeah. I don't know if this is uh like that just kind of media and things have kind of shifted to in general, but so I just feel like there's this common theme with people, that if they start like a new adventure, that has to be the adventure they stay on, and that they can't switch tracks, or they can't be flexible in how they do things.
Yeah.
Because, and this is probably stemming from my own, like, just how I shared, like if I start something, I'll kind of want to keep doing it, but finding
Yes.
that balance.
Oh, sorry, Dylan. I don't know what happened. My Wi-Fi just
Oh,
dropped out. I'm so sorry.
just goes,
You
"Oh,
said you mentioned about finding that balance, and then I lost you.
yeah." And just and like I speak with people that, and I see it because have it had it in myself, of when they start like a podcast or just some new adventure, that they constantly feel the need that they like, I do it this way, so this is how I'm going to do it for the rest of the days, rather than give themselves the flexibility of staying open and fearlessly curious, but just continue. Like that's such a great title, and name, because it's like when you and I'm putting it in my own kind of lens here for a moment, but if you like actually live that way, it doesn't look the same as it did on day one, like day 300 will hopefully look different than it did on day one if you're really like staying furiously, if I'm, really staying furiously curious, Um, so yeah, it's a great mantra.
Thank you, Dylan. And you mentioned earlier about, one of the practices that you have to help you support your mental health is journaling. And you mentioned morning pages and journaling every day. And I definitely resonate with that. That is a really powerful way to keep your lines of communication within yourself open. So it's like a space holder for curiosity without needing to ask the question, because every day you just allow that stream of consciousness to happen. So whether you have prompts or not really doesn't matter, because you're just allowing, in a way, a free flow, a brain dump. And when you observe what it is that you're writing, there is so much wisdom and truth in that. I believe so much in journaling, and honestly, I dropped off journaling for 2 years, and I was starting to feel something was missing in my life. And in order to help me become more accountable, because it was so hard for me to start again, I created something called the Dirty Daily,
Mm.
which is in my online community, and it's a journaling space for whoever wants to contribute. And the most hilarious thing happened. So I started it. I put day one and the date, and I've given some prompts. And honestly, Dylan, day two, I didn't show up. So it was like almost like I failed. And you spoke about this earlier, right? So, when things don't happen, it's like, do I beat myself up about it, or do I just explore where it goes? So on day three, I showed up and I was like, I can't believe it. I wrote in the space, I can't believe it. I launched this, and guess who didn't show up on day two? But you know what? I'm here on day three. And so let's continue. And that permission slip to be, I guess, to be perfectly imperfect is
I
more
love
about
it.
honoring the seasons and cycles of life, right? What are your
It's
thoughts
so
around that?
inspiring. It's so inspiring. Like I love, I guess because like running a business and then like also putting myself out there more and more, like I love the authenticity around like starting something and then not having it be perfect and not like even trying to force it through to be this thing. It's just like so inspiring to me because um I know like for myself, that's one of the fears, I'd have like, if I start this, it's got to look perfect. I got to do it at a big level. It's got to be this thing, it's got to really change people. And then sometimes like, you know, maybe it's the most thing that I didn't even think would be the thing that people like. And they're like, oh, this one thing. I'm like, oh, that's what you like. That was all I had to do. I would have saved a lot of time. Um, but yeah, I love that. And I take breaks with journaling as well. Uh, so right now I've been doing for like, actually I am saying moderation and in breaks, but I've been doing like this at least one line a day on this
Mm,
journal. And I started in 2021. And I fill at least like 1 to 3 sentences every day. And it's fun to look back at like what I was doing a year ago today. Wow, there's some
yeah,
themes that seem to be reoccurring.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think journaling has made a big impact in the way for myself because I am good at like numbing out, and it just helps me like force to like confront myself. It's like a uncomfortable maybe sometimes be like, how am I really feeling? So that
mm,
journaling just kind of draws it out.
yeah. It's so
Yeah.
easy to get busy, right? And so hyper focused on the to do list, especially for those of us and those of you listening who are big on output and productivity. We hyper focus on something, we get very excited, and we just, kind of dive into things in a way that's maybe without thinking. How much of that is actually intentional? How much of that might be we're just avoiding a feeling or a thought? And through that committed time journaling, we get to really access the deeper truth behind a lot of our actions and thoughts. So thank you for sharing, Dylan. This has been the most incredible experience just sitting here with you. I'm right in Malaysia right now, and I know you're in California. And having who like I mentioned, consider to be, a key player in getting me to start my podcast. And now having you as my guest it's totally and utterly surreal.
It's a big honor. It's a big honor to like help in any which way. And I feel like I've used the word honor in emails to you like multiple times, but it really is like the way at which you help people like just to like. And I think I shared this with you before on a different Zoom call we had, but it just like the work you're doing, like just like any which way, like that we need more, we need you everywhere, like less news and fear everywhere, more fearlessly curious.
Mm.
you know
Thank you,
so
Dylan.
it's a real honor for me to be here, and I'm like really excited as both a listener moving forward, and to be like, hey, did you know I was on that podcast?
Before we wrap this up, there is one more thing I'd like to ask you, which I feel is an important topic to cover. And because you mentioned something about a quote unquote. I feel like there are plenty of white men already talking about podcasting, and there seems to be a white male stereotype in podcasting. So I'm curious to know a little bit about that, and
Yes.
then ask you about women in podcasting and what your thoughts are around that.
Yes. Okay. So first thing, disclaimer, I don't have like a well, any of the points I make, I don't really have like talking points, right? I don't be like, oh, I know I'm going to talk to this. I'm not that organized ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should be. But I do notice trends. And I do notice like whether it's the universe showing me things, probably that's what it is. And then I just kind of go like, oh, I'm paying attention. I see kind of this happening. And one thing that sparked me to start digital podcaster was like, I kind of didn't research it very much, but the very little effort I put into researching like podcast coaches and consultants, I just saw like other people that were around, like there's like this stereotype that's like 30s men, like mid 20s to like mid 40s of like in podcasting. And I saw like other men like talking about podcasting, and I just like something, I just got like a little bugged. Like I'm probably generalizing them. I'm not, doing much homework here as far as like what I'm seeing. Yes, maybe I'm judging a little book by its cover a bit, but I just didn't see much. And I'm like, well, I'm fit the literal demographic of these people. So like, why am I doing this? But then I'm like, but I'm like a spirit level. I'm just like, okay, I'm just like a spirit. Like I just want to be like helping people. And if I'm helping people, then it's not about me. So my goal was really to, and has been to empower people. And who I started noticing showing up was like different than like, I didn't really be like, I want this specific type of person to show up. I just wanted people that were vibing with me, right? And the people that have been showing up recently, and this is within like the last couple months. Well, I did from the beginning. I haven't had people like myself show up. Like I don't have a lot of white male show up. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't like. There's very that my demographic is very little. Lately, in the last couple of months, I don't know what this means. I don't know. I'm not even reading into it. That's why I'm saying I don't have talking points. But it's been like minority women who identify as women, and lesbian, and like I don't know what like I put out there. I don't know, like it's over my like head a little bit. I haven't journaled about it, but yeah, not yet. Tomorrow morning. But it's been really cool because like that's been part of my mission, is like empowering people who maybe it's like we have enough like white men taking up space. That's at its simplest state. It's like, and that I don't know, like that is probably threatening to white men. And it's like, white men, it's not like they're going extinct tomorrow, like, but like, I want people who don't really feel safe to share sometimes, to like feel safe to share. Because I've been in rooms where a lot of people don't feel safe, and that's probably an introvert of me talking too.
Mm-hmm.
So it also, like, I also like to threaten like kind of established ideas.
Oh,
And
now
so
we're talking.
yeah, fearlessly rebels.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it kind of like, I like making people uncomfortable. And like what I saw in podcasting was people that were like white males that were comfortable.
Mm.
And I don't know, like as far as like the podcast industry, I haven't had like much interaction, like, and I don't really care because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, if it's a bunch of people that look like maybe I'm not worried about showing up.
Yep.
And I say that like the men that I see, because I see it like,
Mm-hmm.
since I'm kind of in this a lot, like I see like middle age, or yeah, just say middle-aged men like talking about these things. And it's like, what's that doing for like someone that's been afraid to speak up, or and really maybe wants to speak up, but just wants someone to encourage them. So it's been encouraging to me to be able to like see the people who are showing up, because I don't fall into the I wouldn't like label myself as a woman who would identify as like a lesbian. And to see my DMs, in my DMs, like um people that identify as that, is just like cool to me. Also, like I don't can't plan that. I'm not like,
Yeah.
I want to make this piece of content that's going to be it's something that's put out in the universe. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It
If I had
makes a
talking points, it would have
it
made
no, it makes total sense. And I love that you had no talking points about it, because this is what this podcast is about. It's about me
yeah.
asking these questions, about being curious. And for the record, if anybody listening for some reason has found any level of offense by the talking about white men and stereotypes, then I invite you to listen to this again and go a little deeper, because we're all here. And the purpose of this podcast is for us to listen to each other, because all we can do is share from our own personal lived experience. And this is Dylan's personal lived experience. And it resonates with me 100%, which is, let's go beyond the cognitive, like what the mind understands. Okay, let's go a bit quantum. Let's zoom out a little bit. We all see types because that's what the system has built. And also, we all want to belong. And in order to belong, we label, right? But when we see silos happening, or when we see certain types just serving the same type, then we begin to wonder, where is our place and where is our purpose? And whatever type it is that you're magnetizing right now, Dylan, to me speaks to your heart. That you see diversity in your audience is speaking to your heart and not speaking to the visual type that we're seeing on the outside. And that, to me, is everything. Heart-centered leadership and heart-centered service. And that's not to say the middle-aged white man are not serving. Okay, let's be
Yeah.
honest. It's not saying that.
Yeah.
It's just saying, talking about actual stereotypes and having this level of awareness.
Yeah. Like I see the people showing up in their audience, like in the comments on their, like the guests that they're having. And to me, I just like, where's the diversity? Like, where is, like, this just feels like privileged. This feels like it just feels boring, I guess, and it feels like it's like doing the same thing. And it's like, oh, this
More
is
of the
new. This
same.
is, yeah. It's like, and it's been weird for me, because like part of me is like, okay, but like, yeah, I still fit into that box. And then there's other people that um you know aren't like me, that maybe help with podcasts. And like, so I'm like, well, I don't want to take any like business away from them or anything. But then I'm like, well, I'm not, like, I'm just doing what I feel called to do. And I can collaborate, and it's not like a competition or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like, to me, it's the coolest thing is to just help people. And then the people that show up, I'm like, oh, this is who I like wanted to help. And somehow something in my like personality just seems to repel the boring white males, because they ain't showing up. And that's cool. but I don't know what it is.
Well, it's the platform, it's the visibility, and I think you relate. I believe that you relate as being an introvert.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for most of, for one, and I may get the language wrong, and if I do, I get it wrong. But sort of the groups that are seen as minorities. So let's talk about people who don't have that level of visibility globally, and that would be anybody who's basically not white. Let's face it.
Mhm.
Um, are either muting themselves or have been muted. And that's a big movement. That's a big thing to change, right? And so that speaks to a level of introvertedness too. It speaks
Mhm.
to a level of shyness. It speaks to a level of invisibility. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that we didn't plan this. And when, for those of you listening, I started off this conversation by speaking about how you, Dylan, present information in the Podcasting Academy, especially with such tenderness and fragility. This is my perception. And that's what connected me immediately. I just felt safe, and you used that word as well. I just felt safe to be present with you and to listen and learn from you. And I actually didn't see your color. I didn't see your gender. Hard not to see your blue eyes, especially with that really awesome mic cover that just accentuates it. Just saying. But this is the difference between, as I mentioned, just to recap, serving and speaking from the heart and from
Mhm.
a place of true, well, spiritual service, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the highest, like, to me, that's how I can sleep great at night. Like, I'm like, did I live in that way?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I feel that's why to me it's like ever since just starting, it's been awesome because it feels like just there's just something real about it when like everything you just described, it's like that's that you can't like fake that,
Mm-hmm.
and I think especially with podcasting, like to me, if it's gonna be good, it's gotta be like authentic. And over a long enough period of time, like we can know like all this little mechanism, we know when someone's lying, we know when someone's not saying something maybe they want to say. And with podcasts, because it's usually a longer form content, like you can pick up on it, and if it's not, it's not authentic, it's not good, and so um yeah, I just think like that safety is everything, and it's something that I think it should just be like treated as like sacred in a lot of ways. um,
Yes.
and yeah, yeah. And if it means like cutting, huge portions of audiences out or whatever, it's like whatever. Like that's part of the um that's that's part of how it has to happen.
Mm, yeah. You can't
Yeah.
serve everybody. And, well, you could serve everybody, but you don't want to abandon your own values for that.
Yeah.
And that's integrity right there. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Dylan. And, I know that you have your own podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
The Digital Podcaster podcast.
Yes.
And so, based following on from that conversation about diversity, how do you pick or how do you invite your guests onto the podcast? What are some of
um
the criteria, or do you have criteria?
they
What
have
is
to
you?
be a woman, they have to be lesbian. No, just kidding. um you're like, how do you attract these people? You only choose um I actually, I lately, well, these days I've just chose like my brain when I think about it. I go, ooh, these are 3 questions. So I've been doing this kind of new format. I'm always staying curious and I'm trying to stay curious. And part of that has been like experimenting with this new format where I ask 3 questions, and it's really short and really quick. But when my mind kind of wraps around like, ooh, I could ask 3 questions to this person, then I just send them a message and be like, I have 3 questions, kind of like, this is what I was thinking. Um, Sometimes it pops in my head right away. Sometimes it's like the middle of the night. But that's like my criteria is like, if I think, if I basically, if I have like a download of 3 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and right
Okay.
now, I actually haven't had too many downloads. So I've been like, well, I'm a little behind, but that's okay. I'm just trusting that things will happen
Mm-hmm.
how they're supposed to happen.
I love that. Okay. So it's how, and it comes more from a place of where you're internally inspired to be curious,
Yes.
to be curious about a specific person or personality, which I guess are people you know through your network or people who inspire you, or a broad spectrum. Is it comes from a broad spectrum of people?
It might be like in a second. Like I come across someone online and it's in a second, and other times like just kind of comes into my brain of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and then I'll write it down like it was so obvious. Like why don't I do like this? Um and so yeah, that's like my way of doing it at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I got so many like crazy things I could share.
For another time,
But
for
yeah,
the next
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Okay, Dylan, thank you again for saying yes to being here on the Fearlessly Curious podcast. It's been such a pleasure to learn more about you, and what inspires you, your why, and all the different expressions of who you are, beyond Podcasting Academy, with Podcast Workshop, Content Secrets. And we didn't get to talk about content clips. Maybe we'll wrap up with just a little bit about what content clips are, because I'm a big follower of that. Content
Yeah.
clips.
Basically, I just have a service that we turn like podcast video, or any video, any recorded video into clips for social media. There's a lot of companies out there that do that. But we really focus on like what's the mission that the individual person is making. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's very ties back to like what's the goal here, branded in the person's like really feels like a natural extension of them. And we've made like thousands of clips at this point, and um, it's it's grown way bigger than I thought, than I even thought. And so yeah, that's contentclips.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan, for all the ways that you support this community, creative community, the introvert community, the coaches and consultants community, and just the community of curious people who want to find their voice and maybe experiment with getting their voices out there. It's been an absolute pleasure. Listeners, you want to find where Dylan is and what he's doing, then you just need to simply head to the show notes. You know where to find that over on my website. And Dylan, to sign off, is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Mm. Only thing I'll say is we gotta stick together. If you're living fearlessly curious, we gotta stay close together, because if you are listening to this podcast, listen to Melissa, it's you already know it's such a rare thing. And um you gotta stick with your people that support you and uplift you like Melissa does, and that community is everything.
Thank you, Dylan. Until the
Yeah.
next time, stay fearlessly curious.